Hi everyone. So here is the message of the week for week 3. It's it goes really fast. It feels like we just started, and we did. Week 3 isn't that far along in the semester, but still, I think that things are going pretty fast. I don't know how it is for you, but for this course anyway, you're doing well so far. We'll get through it. So as usual in these weekly messages, I cover a whole bunch of things. I'm trying to improve them as I go along for readability and practicality. So one new format this week that I'm going to try and stick with for the rest of the semester for these weekly messages is that kind of having like a little table of contents here, so that if there's stuff you want to skip because you read the stuff already and you get it, then you can just skip ahead. Okay, so I'm always going to start with this kind of like just responding to common things that came up in the previous week, mostly in the Zoom chat, but things that might have come up in the assignments, although I comment more on that content in the section specifically about the week's learning activities. But this is a general topical area. So what I've been noticing both in the work you've been doing and in the Zoom chats over the past couple of weeks is that a lot of people are really kind of catching on to the importance of Indigenous people's connections with the land, and kind of beyond this, because there's often in media and popular media, this idea is already kind of there, people in the land, but sometimes it's this kind of fluffy thing like, oh, they love nature, they're in tune with nature. But I'm really happy that a lot of you, with the readings we've been doing and the videos, and through listening to things like the creation story and kind of getting deeper into that thing of like that interdependence with the land and the ideas of balance. So not only understanding that people are in tune with nature, it goes beyond that. It's people are a part of nature. So there's this relationship between people and animals, and people and plant life, and the ground, like the earth itself, the land itself, because these things are all seen as living things that are related to us. All right, so I'm glad that people are kind of picking up on that, because that's going to kind of come back. I start with that because it's one of the central things in all Indigenous worldviews, pretty much, and it's going to touch on things like when we talk about the impacts of colonization. So much of it has to do with people being removed from their land or not having access to as much of it as before, and it's not just a material wealth thing, although it does touch on that, but it's about all aspects of well-being. So it's really important, modeled on the Indigenous scholars and activists that have mentored me, either directly or just by me listening to their and reading their stuff, is that's a central thing. It's central to everything else. So I wanted to quickly comment on that. I'm glad that people are, and I didn't put it here, but I'm also glad to see people being so receptive to how important it is to have the proper vocabulary. In the past with students, sometimes I've had resistance there, and among some of my colleagues there's resistance there, like it doesn't matter, but words matter. Words are powerful. So I'm glad that people are receptive to that. Maybe the vocabulary quizzes are helping with that. It's the first time I've done these weekly little quizzes, so maybe that's helping too. You can let me know what you think about that. I've mentioned this casually before, but now I'll be more, clear about it. I haven't been picky about lateness. The first couple of weeks I never am, because I realize even in a normal semester, just not even during pandemic times, it takes a while for students to get used to a new semester. And I know all your teachers do things differently, so it can take, I allow for that transition time. So usually the first couple of weeks, I don't really apply any late penalties. Starting week 3, that's when I do it more systematically. So as of week 3, so my general late policy is in all my classes that I accept late work. Okay, so if you miss a deadline, you can hand things in late up to 7 days after the due date. Obviously, if there's a big life thing going on, and you can talk to me and we'll negotiate something, but in practice, if there's no contact and I just get something late, if it's within 7 days after the due date, this counts weekends, then I'll accept it. But there's going to be a penalty of 2% per day. that's actually not a lot, right? If something is worth 5 points, then 2% of 5 is a tiny little fraction. It'll hardly make a blip on your radar, but you'll still see it. And the reason that I do this, sometimes it feels harsh, sometimes it feels unfair. But I think it's important to teach accountability. As a teacher, I'm not just here to teach you material. I'm here to help you with your academic skills, but also being professional, learning to be professional and responsible and accountable to the people that you work with. So, out in work, you're gonna sometimes have something to do that you're gonna need to give to a team member of yours, a peer or a manager or whoever, right? And when you can't meet a deadline, you're affecting somebody else's workflow, because if the person is expecting something from you on a certain day, well, they've planned their other work around that so that then they can do what they need to do with that thing you're giving them. So, concrete example in our situation, when I have on my calendar with everything that's due and when it's due, and I plan my workload, if there's an assignment coming in on the Monday, then I'm planning my work around that, and when am I going to mark this so that I can give it back to students in a timely manner with some feedback, right? Because, no, students don't like getting their stuff a month later because it's gone by then. They've already, So I try to get things back as soon as possible, and I can only do that if people hand their stuff in on time. So if a bunch of people just decide that they're going to hand stuff in a week later, then that means that I have to adapt my workload to that later on. And that's not really fair to me. It's kind of the reverse is true too. If I hold you to this standard, I abide by it too. So I make it a point to always put up assignments, the weekly stuff, a week before, right? So if there's a week where something happens to me and I can't prepare the stuff for the following week until, say, the Thursday, I'll give you more time, because it's not fair to only give you a few days when normally you would have a week. For bigger assignments, I try to always post them up 2 weeks before to give you time to read it and work on it. And if ever I can't, then I would extend the deadline. So what that means from your point of view in terms of handing things in, if you can't meet the deadline, to be professional and responsible and respectful of the people that you work with, in this case your teachers, then you need to let the person know in advance that you can't meet the deadline so they can adapt their workload. So if I know that a couple of students, I gave them extensions, like say a week or something, well then I can plan my time later on to mark those others that come in, right? And that's a fair way to do it. So that means that if you need an extension, I'm pretty liberal about giving extensions. I don't have a problem with it, because then that lets me know that I can manage my time in a different way. But you have to ask me 24 hours before it's due. That's my condition. Okay, so of course I know there are cases where that can't happen. There are emergencies that happen at the last minute, and that's something that as soon as you can, you get in touch with me and we'll talk. But as a general rule, 24 hours before, you can ask for an extension. We'll talk about what would seem reasonable depending on your circumstances, and we'll work with that. Okay, so that's, again, it's modeling accountability. And it's a small penalty, so if you need to take the hit and that helps you learn that lesson, well then, it's not going to make a huge difference on your final mark, but you're still getting that message. So clarifications about weekly activities. So as you know, most of you seem to have picked up on this. There are 3 things to do every week based on readings and slides, PowerPoints that I give you. So there's always, for each week, there's 1 or more PowerPoints where I kind of highlight the main points of the readings that go with that week, and a video that goes with that where I explain it for those of you who are verbal learners. So it's kind of like trying to do as if we had classes and where I would present the stuff. So one thing that I want to make sure you all know is that you know, I get your stuff on assignments and Dropbox and Leia, well then I mark them and then I put them back there, I re-upload them there so you can retrieve them. It's really important that before you do the stuff for the following week, you look at the feedback from the week before, because that's where, even if you got full marks, sometimes I give 2 out of 2 because I'm like, okay, you're almost there. And especially in the beginning, I don't mark as harshly on anything, and then it's like, okay, this little improvement, you know. And then in future weeks, if you improve that, then, you know, but then if you aren't responding to my feedback in future weeks, and I keep saying every week, no, be clearer or make direct references to the text, and you keep not doing it, then you're going to keep losing marks. You're going to start to lose marks. So go look at the feedback, even if you got 2 out of 2. You know, I put some feedback in blue on your documents, so go get them when you get that notification. I'm guessing you get a notification. Go back to assignments and Dropbox and get that old document that with my feedback. So one comment that's super common, I'd say still about half of the people have struggled with this, is that in both the reading questions and the journal, I really need to see evidence that you read the reading or watched whatever videos for that week, because a lot of the responses I'm seeing are so vague that people could have written them without actually doing the reading or watching the video, and that's not really fair. So I need to see some kind of, you're not writing a whole essay here, but you're still kind of pointing to specific things about that you read to explain where your reasoning is coming from. All right, so a rule of thumb, like maybe half of your response can be direct reference to stuff in the article or video, and then the other half can be your thoughts about it. And in the journal, you can go a bit deeper into your thoughts and bring in some of your personal stuff, because we have that 4 aspects with the emotional and spiritual and all that, and that's fine, but you still need to kind of show me that you actually read the stuff. And the journals don't have to always be about the material from that week. They can be about previous weeks. Some of you have been responding to my comments, and that's okay. All right. What I noticed too is that some of you are kind of essentially copying and pasting one of the answers from your reading questions into your journal and saying almost the same thing. You're supposed to go a bit deeper in the journal. The reading question is about seeing that you read it and you're able to think about it kind of on an intellectual way. And in the journal, then you can go a bit deeper into thinking about how it applies to you. All right, so if you're just copying and pasting, then you're just doing the same thing twice, and again, that's not really fair, and it's not fair to you because you're not getting to dig in. All right, so again, a journal is where you can let loose a little bit and go into your kind of personal stuff as you're processing this, your concerns. You're like, I don't really get this, or I get this and it's inspiring me to think this way. But again, it should have to do with stuff we're learning in the course at base, and then you can expand based on there. Please, for the journals, a bunch of you kind of have just been handing in a new document, so there again, go back and get the one that I sent you back from the previous week, and then continue your response in that same document. So when you hand in, so for example, your journal for week 3, it should have your responses and my comments from weeks 2 and 1. All right, in that order. So it's always the newest on top, and then you have the earlier entries and my comments. So at the end, we're going to have this one document, and we're going to kind of trace back like your process of thinking through the semester, and that's going to help you for your final project. Just again, some general stuff here. I guess this could have gone in up higher up, and I'll probably change that so this document in the video won't look the same as the one you'll be reading, but I think you'll live. So a lot of you will have seen comments about remembering to capitalize Indigenous. I already saw a difference between week 1 and 2. So week 2 it got a little bit better, but there's still some issues there. And also, we haven't talked about this yet, but I've been pointing out that Indigenous is an adjective. So you can talk about Indigenous peoples, Indigenous people, Indigenous languages, cultures, and so forth. So it's not a noun. You wouldn't say the Indigenous. That doesn't really make sense because it's not a noun. Okay, I'm not taking marks. These are things that the first few weeks I'm not taking off marks for not capitalizing Indigenous or for using the wrong like First Nations instead of Indigenous, but you do have those weekly vocabulary quizzes that are meant to help you with that. And like in the first assignment, for example, I'm going to start to make take off little marks for that, and it'll get harsher. It sounds harsh to say harsh, but just because this is important, right? So it's the stuff you need to know. If you're curious again about the breakdown of marks for the weekly activities, another thing you can check when you get your mark, you should see comments also. Sometimes I give individuals comments, but then sometimes there's a comment for the whole class. So this week I put it in the comment for the whole class that you can see, but it has the breakdown again, and that's in the first document I ever posted to this semester about the weekly activities. But just to remind you, and I'll try to do that periodically, if you're wondering about the mark that you got on 4 for that week, the quiz is worth 1 point. So even if there are multiple questions, for example, last week there were 5 questions, I think, in week 2. So that means out of that 1 point, it's like 0.2 per question. So if you got 3 out of 5, that's 0.6 out of 1. All right. The week before there were 4, so that was like 0.25 per question. So if you got 3 out of 4, it was 0.75 out of 1. So that quiz is worth 1 point. The reading questions are worth 2 points, so 1 per question if there are 2. And the journal entry is worth 1 point. And all that together is your 4 points each week. All right. Speaking of new assignments, this is a copy paste from another class. I'll remove it before I send this out. The instructions for assignment due. This was originally due February 1st, but again, I didn't have time to create it in time, so I extended it. All right, so you have until February 8th. It's not a big scary thing. If you've looked at it, you might say, okay, it's kind of more about thinking about prior knowledge and stuff, but it's been there for a while now, so if you haven't looked at it yet, please do so this week. Just look at the instructions. As usual, there's a video for those of you who are verbal learners and you like to have those verbal explanations, but please have a look this week, and if you have any questions, let me know right away. Not on the 7th. Okay, Sunday nights I don't check my Mayos usually, once in a while, but not always, so if you write me at 11 p.m. on Sunday the 7th, I might not get back to you in time. So let me know this week if you have questions. Zoom discussions. We've had some great discussions the past couple of weeks. I'm really stoked about how it went, and I said that last class. It's like, this is exactly what I was looking to achieve, this dialogue. You have been responding to each other, so it's not just me talking back. Sometimes I get excited and I'm like, but I do try to really leave, like, when somebody speaks up and they bring their stuff about the readings, I try to give other people the option to respond first, and have that dialogue, and it's been really great. I just wanted to, those of you who haven't come yet, I know it's tempting to wait till the end and just push it off, but if you're shy to talk in front of other people, it'll be even worse when you wait, because a lot of people are going to wait. That's the way it goes. And so those last 5 weeks, I suspect we'll have at least 15 to 20 people in each group, which will make it more challenging for you to speak up. Okay, it might be more intimidating for some of you. So right now we have these nice groups. There's been less than 10 people, I think, each time. So it's like actually a really good time to come, and it's really easy going. Again, if you're still unclear on how these things go, look at About the Wednesday Zoom discussions under distributed documents, the basics. It's not scary. I don't think it's scary. No one there is going to judge you for anything you say. Even if there's something that's kind of inaccurate, it just gets discussed, and it's not like you're wrong. It's not about that at all. Okay, it's been very open and I think free flowing. All you have to do to prepare is to have done that week's readings and come prepared to show that you read it. So whatever questions you wind up asking, it's showing that you read the stuff, you're able to think about it a little bit, you're able to refer to specific things in the chapter, kind of like with the assignments. And it is an option for anybody to type your response in the chat if you really, really are uncomfortable speaking up for whatever reason. Nobody will judge you. So we've been doing both, right? Some people have been typing in, and I read it out loud for the others, and it's fine, right? And if any of you who've been coming or who've come at least once, and no pressure, you don't have to do this, but if you've been coming and you want to reply to all in this Mayo to attest on how easy it is and how how we've had these good discussions. And again, if you don't think it's the case, you can, hey, if you want to say, you know what, I don't like how it's been going, you are free to say that. And I'll try to work with that to improve the experience. I'm very open to that. But if people want to testify to how it's not this big scary thing, please feel free. You can and share your experience with others. I really welcome that. And people can come, like, if before your 5 times that you come as an active participant for Marks, you want to just come one time and just observe how it goes, just to get your toes wet, that's fine. And then if you wind up inspired and jumping in, hey, you'll get points. So again, depending on the quality of your intervention. So I wanted to throw that out there. This week's tip of the week is up. I talk a little bit about procrastination and focus. There's no document, it's only a video this week. It's about 20 minutes long, but I talk a bit about it, but I also point to where you can get more resources that you can read. And so it's something that a lot of people struggle with, so I wanted to talk about it early in the semester. I've dealt with it all my life. It's a very common thing, so don't feel bad if that's been an issue, but if you know it's an issue and it's affecting you, now is a great time to start looking at ways to overcome it. I just want to remind people that I'm still open to creating, small study pods or one small study pod. We can use Microsoft Teams for this or whatever. If there are students who, again, if you deal with procrastination and you have a hard time kind of getting started on things and you want to keep on top of things, then if a small group of students kind of commits to keeping each other accountable, maybe finding a common time to work each week, just let me know and I can, create space for that to happen. Or hook people up and you create your own space, whatever, but just let me know if this is something you'd like, and then I will gather people. This week I don't have any official office hours. Usually Mondays and Thursdays I'm there. My open Zoom at 2:30. Nobody's been coming. It's just like a regular semester. But I have to cancel them because of other obligations. But I've set up times between Monday and Wednesday where people can make appointments with me. So you can follow this link and book a time, and if none of those times work and you really need to see me, just please don't be shy to write me a bio and we'll find a time that works for both of us. Finally, this week's reading activities, there are 3 PowerPoints. I divided them up so there's one per reading question. Essentially, the first 2 are each attached to the separate reading questions because there are different options. So that's, have a look at that too if you're confused, because one of the options for one of the reading questions is to go to a presentation on Monday at 2:30, which is one of the reasons I'm canceling my office hours, because I want to be there. But you don't have to go to that. If you have a class, don't panic, all right? You have another option. So, but just in case you do want to take advantage of that option instead of reading a chapter in the book, then you should look at that so you know what to do. And oops, this I have to change. This is copy pasted from my other class, but I'll put in another Indigenous tune this week. And oh yeah, the third, sorry, just to go back to this thing, and I'm pointing, but you can't see me. You can't see what I'm pointing at. This online world, man. It's messing with my brain. But the third PowerPoint corresponds to the vocabulary quiz. So that's it. I'll see some of you on Wednesday or before in my virtual office.